University of Wisconsin Board of Regents finally approves punishments for students who disrupt free speech on campus. Before you get too excited, just keep in mind that Hillary Clinton has a better chance of going to prison than the radicals on UW campuses will actually enforce these punishments. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the realistic Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated about the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we head to Wisconsin's capital to discuss a call by the university to revise all the terrible, no good, very bad white curriculum. Plus, 2 overweight professors claim the coronavirus may cause fat phobia. I kid you not. And we dish up some real education in the form of the instant classic poem On First Looking Into Chapman's Homer by John Keats. But we start in Madtown, Wisconsin, where the university will now punish anyone who disturbs the free speech rights of others on campus. Well, after the third or fourth try, maybe. Yeah, this story really makes me mad. So you've got the Board of Regents who are trying to put together some teeth, right? The legislature of the state of Wisconsin and the Board of Regents have generally agreed that students, we're talking about students and faculty here, don't have the right to violently or intolerably shut down the speech of conservative speakers or conservatives on campus. The problem is they don't want to actually have to do anything. Half the Board of Regents, which is liberal, the liberal half of the Board of Regents doesn't believe there should be any punishments at all, because to punish liberal kids from shutting down conservatives, they say, will be stifling free speech. So when liberal kids riot and pull fire alarms and blockade and shout down conservative speakers, which they have done at UW-Madison multiple times, to actually hold them accountable by punishing them, that's going to stifle free speech. So what they really did in the Board of Regents is make some suggestions, right? And they're incredibly tepid, aren't they?
So, yeah, they had amendments to Chapter UWS17, which was approved in October, and it clarified the policy, which would require students who have materially and substantially disrupted the free speech of others to be suspended after, as you said, 2 violations, and expulsion then after 3. And schools must conduct formal investigations and disciplinary hearings.
Each time. And how do you prove when liberals are attacking conservative students? How are you going to get a bunch of faculty to approve that materially and substantially they have disrupted? Yeah. This is all word soup, guys. Nothing's coming to this.
Exactly. And when I was just going to say that, material and substantially, what does that even mean? And what does a formal investigation look like in a disciplinary hearing? What actually constitutes one of those? Is it just a couple of professors hanging out in the hallway saying, yeah, we're having a hearing, okay, yeah.
I'll tell you what's going to happen. It will be their diversity apparatus who does it, right? It's going to be the same people right now who applaud and egg on liberal professors and students to do this. It'll be part of the administration, right? They'll have a committee of bleeding heart liberal progressives, and you watch where this goes.
There was a public hearing in March, and they added 5 UW-Madison students and a professor called the policy vague and draconian. And the board received 14 written comments, and 12 of which opposed the rule. So it's interesting how much influence just a couple comments can be when you're looking at things like this. Because people take a look at this, and it's like, they listen to one person.
This should be the most obvious thing in the world. Look, you can say whatever you want if you're liberal. You just can't stop conservatives from speaking. That's what this is. But look what they say. It's students, lawmakers, faculty, and civil liberties organizations have vocally opposed their disciplinary sanction here. I promise you, if you had conservative kids doing this to liberals, this would be over, right? And that's what's so maddening about this. What they're doing is they're allowing the heckler's veto to exist.
Yes.
They are preserving it because they believe that the conservatives and the speakers and the kids and the conservative programs don't deserve equal treatment. They see these as inferior. And so again, the students, faculty, lawmakers, and civil liberties organizations have vocally opposed the disciplinary sanctions. At a public hearing March 5 UW-Madison students and a professor, like you said, called it vague and dogmatic. And Tony Evers, the Wisconsin's liberal governor, has already said he's going to veto. We had Governor Scott Walker for about 10 years. We had, for most of that 10 years, we had a Republican-controlled Senate and a Republican-controlled Assembly. None of this was able to get done. None of it. It's not going to get done now, I can promise you that.
It's fascinating to me because I thought we had this thing called the First Amendment, so I guess we just can't look at that anymore.
And that's exactly right. The First Amendment here is only important that the protesting kids don't get shut down, that the ones who are stopping the speech of conservatives are allowed to do it without repercussion. What is the repercussion for conservative kids? Their speech is halted. Their First Amendment rights are stopped. Because the Second Amendment, because the protesting liberals do not want you to do anything about their right to shout you down. The conservatives want to speak. The progressives want to censor. And everybody here, from the governor on down, are arguing, we don't dare punish the ones who want to shut down to protect the ones who just want to speak. That's where this is.
Go Madison. We're going to stay at Madison because the Daily Cardinal, which is one of the student newspapers there, ran an editorial basically advocating for the decolonization of the university curriculum. It was a February editorial, and the board labels the university's current curriculum as being Eurocentric, whitewashed, sexist, and heteronormative. They say what is taught must be inclusive and encompassing all the intersectionalities, arguing that the students' minds are most formative and malleable during their college years, so they must be exposed to various cultures, histories, and identities.
Well, that's not true. That by the time you're 21, 22, your mind is set, as these kids obviously demonstrate. But this is the logical outcrop here. Notice when they were yelling at you to diversify, get rid of the white men, and we've done that, right? If you think UW-Madison's curriculum is loaded with white guys, think again, unless they're scientists, right? I mean, the humanities have been completely, and the social sciences have been completely redrawn along non-Western lines. Marxism is Western. I shouldn't call them non-Western. The Marxist part of Western culture is perfectly okay with these social justice warriors, because that's what they're doing. They're engaging in Marxist dialectics here. But what they're talking about here is science, right? Too many scientists who've contributed too much to science have been white, have been male, have come from Western cultures. And so what they mean by decolonize and intersectionalize means that we're going to have to make everything about the destruction of gender as we understand it. You're going to have to deal with transgenderism now. You're going to have to shift the focus of colleges even farther away from actual knowledge and material accomplishment. And you're going to have to shift it even more towards the sociology of left-wing personifications, right? So it's all going to be about transgender all the time, LGBTQ all the time, pro-abortion all the time. You think about this in regard to the previous story we just did. There will be no more conservative speakers. Now what they've done, but by protecting the protesters who shut down speech and really not doing anything to them, violently shut down speech, and now calling for a complete de-Eurocentricizing of the committee, what you're doing is you're making it you're saying it loudly and clearly. Any traditional values, any traditional Christian values, any traditional American history, any traditional view of Western culture when it comes to science and logic and reason are now by definition discriminatory. So before your conservative speakers even set foot on campus, they are nailing down the fact that they are bigots to begin with and won't. That's why we won't allow them to speak. And that's why if you slip one through, we'll violently close it down. And that's why we just told the state of Wisconsin that you will not stop us. And the state of Wisconsin said, no, we won't.
All right. Well, I know you're a bit of a wordsmith, so I want you to analyze this editorial because anytime college students get together and write an editorial, they try to sound a lot smarter than they actually are. So this editorial, talking about this decolonization, begins. The educational pipeline is a period of exploration of one's identity, place in society, and their academic interests.
A pipeline is a place of exploration. Okay.
Just wait, there's more. It's a phase where opinions are like clay in its initial stages. If well shaped, it can make a beautiful pot. But mishandling can result in long-lasting effects.
But what's the
Wait. I'm not done. I'm not done.
The implication would be a well-crafted pot versus what?
Long-lasting effects.
There you
exactly.
go.
Okay. The curriculum taught to children in school defines the opinions formed at this early clay phase, but also sets them up for future academic exploration.
It's college. You graduate and you're done, right? The whole thing.
It continues. I'm doing this for your own misery.
Torment me.
I am. Also in the article, it says we need to break down the assumption everyone is heteronormative to stop the stigma and othering of the LGBTQIA plus community. This is an opportunity to break down stereotypes and prejudices by bringing awareness and inclusivity. This kind of curriculum is necessary for our education system and creates inclusivity of all genders. Additionally, there must be accurate depictions of women's roles in history, as well as the history of LGBTQIA plus figures and movements in the U.S.
Ignore the fact that the transgender issue gets in the way of the women's issue, right? So we got to have transgender, we got to have transgender women, and we still got to somehow value women, even though men can play their sports, right?
I'm not done yet.
And let me throw this out there, because this is what they do. And now you're the University of Wisconsin, and you've set up the situation, you've allowed the university to function in such a way that you have no choice but to give them what they want. Either you give them what they want, or you are all those things, right? And you become the conservatives they now have to censor.
They threw out some more imagery in this paragraph. After all, cutting off a bird's wings before flight ensures that it will never fly. Students are required to land on a major before they have even reached adulthood, and then are required to stay on the same track for essentially the rest of their lives. It then goes on to talk about how an astounding 72% of Generation Z students believe colleges should allow them to develop their own majors. Such a radical change would be perfect for the development of the next crop of Renaissance people, as they could
we
freely
can't talk about the Renaissance.
pursue interests as far apart from each other as possible without any restrictions.
No restrictions, no grades, no tuition dollars you have to pay. No restrictions in the dorms, except no conservatives. Make your own major, right? And so show up, take whatever class you want to take, but only the classes we say you're allowed to teach. Take them or not take them, major in nothing or anything or everything. No nothing, no tests, no final exams because they're stressful. No money spent, nobody owing anybody anything. And this is going to return us to the Renaissance, an era they say we're not allowed to talk about or teach.
You know what?
Outstanding.
You do you. We're going to stay at UW-Madison because they just keep coming out with craziness. The Daily Cardinal again reported at the end of March the calling of the Chinese virus for coronavirus as being racist. There was a chalk writing on a sidewalk on the campus, and it said, "It's from China, hashtag Chinese virus." And there was actually another chalk drawing that said, "F the Chinese government." So the response then to chalk by Chancellor Rebecca Blank is to send out a university-wide
about how racist
email.
everybody is.
No one person, country, or ethnicity created this pandemic. Disease does not discriminate. We want to be clear that racist behaviors or stereotyping of any kind are not tolerated at UW-Madison, no matter if we are online, passing others in public, or quarantined at home.
Let me say F the communist Chinese government, right? Can I say that?
F the communist Chinese government.
It is the most repressive government in the world. They have their own concentration camps called the Laogai. They are abusing about 1 million Uyghur Muslims right now. I thought you cared about the Muslims, Rebecca Blank. It is a travesty of a government. They are the worst human rights offenders in the world. They're lying demonstrably about the nature and the origin of this virus. And you taking their side on this, not being able to say, I guarantee you if that had said F the American government, this would have been beautifully protected speech. You are cowards. And I wonder how many Chinese nationals, whether students or professors, over the years have been at Wisconsin-Madison only to sell our secrets back to China.
Oh, I was actually going to make a positive of it.
Go ahead.
Yeah. There was a commenter on the article, and it was the first one up there. It said, "My wife is Chinese and grew up in China. She thinks we need to ensure we blame the communist government for the virus. If not, then it is likely to happen again. Remember, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, is an evil organization. By saying it's racist to blame them is just enabling the CCP's propaganda. Don't be fooled into blaming the CCP is blaming Chinese people. The Chinese people are the ones really suffering under the CCP. And by not blaming the CCP for covering up the virus and arresting the doctors that originally found the virus, you are really supporting the oppression of the Chinese people."
Yeah, and you pretend that the people chose communism.
Yeah.
You pretend that when President Xi made himself president for life, that was some kind of a democratic process. You know, you really are, Rebecca Blank, a laughing stock. From everything you've done and from everything you choose to be, for the things you ignore, and we've seen the stories all up up and down the line here. We've seen your cowardice when it comes to the curriculum and the way you will not protect free speech. The way that you defend free speech by allowing thug liberals to shut down violently and vocally non-liberal speech. You think that's okay. You got a Democrat now as the governor who's going to rubber stamp this for you. And the very lies that the Chinese are telling right now are you're telling them too, right? That anyone who criticizes the communist government for what's going on with Wuhan, they're racist. Congratulations, you are a member of the Chinese Politburo. Good job, Rebecca. Maybe you could take your big fat salary and move there.
Just a little ways away, still in the state of Wisconsin, the good old UW La Crosse fat professors are back. And no, I am not fat shaming them because they call themselves two fat professors. That's their name. They are, we've talked about them several times now, and they are professors basically of fat studies. And now, with the virus, they're claiming that COVID-19 is causing a fat phobia. Darcy Thune is the author of Am I Fat? And she wrote this in the International Fat Studies Handbook. She recently published a blog post.
At the Fat Studies Conference.
Yes.
Oh,
she put a blog post on their Two Fat Professors website, and the piece titled Diet Culture at the End of the World outlines Thune's opinion regarding weight gain during the COVID-19 crisis. Lori Stoll, we talked about her, I think that was last week, who, sociologist, whatever, she's the other fat professor and has obviously a concentration in women and gender studies, published a blog on her site called I See You, Fat Girl, Fat Pride, and Fat Visibility. The girl is GRRL, by the way. So Thune wrote the article in response to the many posts that she saw popped up on her social media about people basically being shamed for not going to the gym or eating too much or getting fat, basically, or for not starving ourselves while we're stuck here in quarantine as the world ends. And so she's saying how dangerous it is in this diet culture, and you should love yourself if you're fat.
The blog post repeatedly refers to those who are cognizant of their weight as part of diet culture. Mm-hmm. So if you're somebody who checks your weight or somebody who gets on a scale or somebody thinks that they need to weigh a certain amount, you're participating in fat shaming culture. Did you know that? Just like our black professor said, right? That you, just to be white, just to be white, right, makes you conspicuous. To be, even if you're fat and are worried about your fatness, see, I'm okay, I don't worry about it. If you're fat and worry about your fatness, then you're participating in this culture as well. The blog repeatedly refers to those who are aware of their weight as part of diet culture. Thune criticizes those who speak out against weight gain and characterize it as dangerous, saying they feed into a system of fat phobia that oppresses and abuses so many. So once again, as we've said before, who can use the coronavirus to whine the loudest? The shamelessness of these progressives. If somebody else is getting more attention, if some, they measure everything. The only validity they see is in suffering. They see no validity in hard work. They see no validity in trying to become a better person, and that includes losing weight. They see no validity in these things. They see no reality in pulling yourself up by your bootstrings, AOC, right? They see nothing legitimate about actually studying and learning about other cultures and people. They measure everything by this new unit. The progressive unit of measurement is called the suffer movement, right? How much suffering, how much victimhood do we see? Because all of the attention should be focused on the biggest victims, and in literally the biggest victim sense, fat pride now.
Well, and that's the thing; they don't want to actually weigh any of this.
They don't want to weigh.
They don't want to weigh it because they just want to be the biggest.
They don't want to be healthier.
No.
Their mental health, their self-esteem is more important than their actual health. And so I'll get as fat as I need to be or want to be, but you have to make me believe I'm still beautiful, right?
And here's my thing with this. Since they're so proud of being called two fat professors, shouldn't they be immune to this? Shouldn't it just bounce right off of them?
No, because being fat and using the word fat is like being black and appropriating the N-word right now, or being a woman, a feminist, and appropriating the C-word, right? That's now really hip. Or to be gay now and to call yourself queer, right?
Yeah,
This is what you do. What do you do is You call yourself the hateful name that you want no one else to call you, and use it as a badge of honor that'll get you out of actually having to change anything about yourself. I've embraced my fatness, and then you all just have to leave me be. And you still have to tell me I'm beautiful, and you still have to treat me like a victim, and you still have to open a fat studies program at your college, and you still have to have affirmative action for fat people, and it goes on and on and on.
Wow, that's a whole handful you had there.
And
that was a lot of. That was. So
and
I have to call you beautiful from now on.
You
Is that what you're
should.
saying? You're beautiful.
Thank you. See, that's all we wanted. Now bring on the pizza pie, baby. See, I've been validated, so now I can keep overeating. Right? That's how that works. That's what and they can write papers about how I'm victimized. As I said to you a couple weeks ago when we did a fat phobia show, remember? Mm-hmm. I said, for the first time in my life as a cisgendered Christian white male, I now have a reason to be a victim. Shower me with your love, America. Shower me with your reparations. Shower me with your golden liquid from Golden Corral.
I was going to say, what are we getting showered in?
Those cheese fountains, right? Shower me with love and attention. Give me raises and promotions. Let me open up my own fat studies department where I get tenure. Let me whine and cry and be like everybody else because I'm fat.
And now, time for some real education. Poet John Keats was an English romantic.
And he was not fat.
Much like Duke Pesta, whose contemporaries in the early 19th century included Lord Byron and Percy Shelley. Many of the people know Keats from his poems Ode to a Nightingale and Sleep and Poetry. And really, you can just know him as being the poet who wrote a lot of odes. Ode to this and ode to that. But his career was actually just a handful of years, because at the age of 20, just 5 years before he died in 1821, he wrote a sonnet called On First Looking into Chapman's Homer. And that's what we're actually going to talk about today.
Yeah, he died at 25,
at
right?
Age
died
25.
very young. Tuberculosis, I believe
Yes,
it was. Yep. And he had an amazing career. He's one of those guys. In 5 years, he did the work of most people's career. It would have been interesting to see what he would have been like if he had 40 years, the things he might have been able to come up with. This is one of his earliest poems, and it's called On First Looking into Chapman's Homer. Put the poem up, Mike. Now, of course, Homer, he's talking about the Odyssey. And so the poet is describing that time when he first read the Chapman translation into English of Homer's great poem, The Odyssey. And it absolutely changed the life. It's almost what made him wanted to be a poet. He read this translation, George Chapman's translation of Homer's Odyssey, and he fell completely in love with poetry and wrote this beautiful sonnet about it. So this is what happened, what he felt upon first reading Chapman's Homer. Keats says, much have I traveled in the realms of gold. The realms of gold for Keats becomes a metaphor, an analogy, becomes a way of saying all of the great poetic people who've lived. Remember what Odysseus did in the Odyssey. Odysseus was trapped after the Trojan War for 10 years, and he bounced all around to these different places across the Mediterranean and learned the people's names and cultures before he could get back home. He metaphorizes this, Keats. The realms of gold are all the places in the canon of literature I've been. I've been to the island of Shakespeare. I've been to the island of Milton. I circled around the straits of Homer, right? He's applying the physical travels of Odysseus to his intellectual travels through the realms of gold, the golden poets. Go back to this. Much have I traveled in the realms of gold, and many goodly states and kingdoms seen. Round many western islands have I been, which bards in fealty to Apollo hold, right? These great floating islands of art, they're dedicated to the god Apollo, who was the god of poetry and artistry in the ancient Greek world. That's your first 4 lines, your first quatrain. Oft of one wide expanse had I been told, one really big island of poetic achievement, right? Oft of one wide expanse had I been told, that deep-browed Homer ruled as his demesne. Yet did I never breathe its pure serene, till I heard Chapman speak out loud and bold. And in that second quatrain, right, sonnets are 14-line poems, generally 4 quatrains, 4 lines, 4 lines, 4 lines, 3 quatrains, 12 lines of verse, each quatrain with a slightly different theme or subject, and then you get the couplet at the end. So put it back there. At the end of the second quatrain, we find out that as he's been reading across the realms of gold. There's one particularly accomplished huge island there that Homer ruled over. But I never did, he says, breathe its pure serene. I love that. The pure serenity of his verse, till I heard the translation made by Chapman, right? And then the final quatrain. What happened when he read it? Then felt I like some watcher of the skies when a new planet swims into his ken, or like stout Cortez when with eagle eyes he stared at the Pacific, and all his men looked at each other with a wild surmise, silent upon a peak in Darien. He describes his discovery of the great poets, particularly this great poet, Homer, as what it must have been like when an astronomer discovers an unseen planet or asteroid before, or he uses Cortez. He got his history wrong. It was actually Balboa who stood upon those peaks in South America and looked on to see the Pacific Ocean, right? Something that had not been seen by European eyes from this perspective again, looking beyond South America from that peak in Darien. A beautiful poem about literary travel, about studying the great islands of Western poetry, the very things that the idiot professors at the University of Wisconsin feel need to be decolonized.
And that will do for another week of Hello Darkness, my old friend. For those of you with kids, just a reminder that Freedom Project Media is releasing 2 daily animated education videos on our Facebook page. We highlight a new American president every day at 10 a.m. Central Time, and then one of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence at 2 p.m. So gather the kids and do a little homeschooling with Freedom Project.
And we are still enrolling for fall classes. If you want to put your kids in a school that's going to be there in fall, that's going to give your kids a real education, reading, writing, and arithmetic, consider Freedom Project Academy. If you have a student in K-12, take a look at our Judeo-Christian live online classes starting in the fall. Request your free information packet at freedomforschool.com. That's freedomforschool.com. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. And until next time, be like those watchers of the stars.